In Holocure, there are 3 things you need to concern yourself with in regards to your character: the skills you have, the weapons you add to your build, and the items you choose for your build. While the skills of a character are immutable, and the weapons generally work regardless of character, the items you choose can easily make or break a run. As such, it's important to know what items you will be using in your build. Items are in-game boosters that can be equipped to your character, all with unique properties. You can only get a total of 6 items in a run, and they can be upgraded via the level up, anvils, or holozon boxes. The game separates items into 3 categories: healing, stats, and utility. However, if you take one look at these categories, you'll immediately find that they are kind of unhelpful. As such, I will be creating my own categories, which may or may not be more useful. The first category will be healing items, same as the one in the actual game. It consists of Nurse's Horns, Band-Aid, Uber Sheep, and Full Meal. You should generally equip at least one healing item on your character, especially when you're first starting out, as they will be keeping you alive. However, since there is a limit to how much healing a character can use, most characters usually only need one healing item, and as you get better at the game and unlock more upgrades in the shop, you'll generally need the healing items less and less. Ideally, your one healing item should be either Nurse's Horns or Band-Aid. Band-Aid heals 10% of your HP every 3 seconds until 80% of the damage is healed, and at its max level of 3, this 80% becomes 100%. Nurse's Horns has a 30% chance to heal 2 HP when you defeat an enemy, and if you take a hit when you have less than 15% HP, you have a chance to heal 30% of your HP. At its max level of 3, it will heal 6 HP when you defeat an enemy. Which item you should go for really depends on the situation. Band-Aid is a more consistent source of healing, but it also has an unlock condition where you need to die after 10 minutes in a run to unlock it. Nurse's Horn is unlocked by default, and while its healing is contingent on the number of enemies you defeat, you're generally going to be swarmed with lots of enemies, so you're going to be healing a lot. I personally find Band-Aid to be better as it's more consistent, but Nurse's Horn is just as good, and on some characters, it's straight up better. Uber Sheep is not as good as the previous 2 healing items, but it's not bad either. It increases the chance that enemies will drop food, and every few seconds a hamburger will drop out of the sky. However, its healing will proc less than Nurse's Horn and Band-Aid, and while the burst healing of a single hamburger is higher than a single proc of either of those items, Uber Sheep is just far too inconsistent when compared to either of the previous healing items. Combined with its high max level of 5, and the item is generally not worth even getting, let alone maxing out. It only works best with characters who need a lot of healing to proc certain effects. Full Meal pretty much is the worst of the 4 healing items. All it does is double the amount of healing you get from your healing items and drops. Since it doesn't actually heal you, you need to get at least one other healing item to make full use of it, and the double healing is often unnecessary as all the previous healing items are generally good enough to heal you to full HP without Full Meal. Full Meal's only real benefit is that it has a max level of 1, meaning you don't need to waste upgrades maxing it out. But that's not even that much of a benefit, as there are hardly any characters who can really benefit from it at all. The next set of items will be defensive items. These include body pillow, plushie, headphones, and breastplate. Each one protects you in a different way, and as such each has its own strengths and weaknesses, as well as synergies. Body Pillow is the most straightforward of defensive items. It creates a shield that absorbs some damage that regenerates every 15 seconds and also reduces the damage you take. The price is that it has a high max level of 5. However, Body Pillow's main strength isn't the extra health the shield gives you or the fact that it reduces the amount of damage you take. It's that it protects buffs you may get. There are some characters and items that get buffs that are contingent on not getting hit. However, if you get hit and have a Body Pillow shield, the shield's health will drop, but it won't count as your character getting hit. As such, Body Pillow basically increases the margin of error you can work with on these characters and items and makes them much easier to utilize. The second defensive item, Plushie, is not as straightforward. Plushie is unlocked by surviving 10 minutes with Hako's Bales, and the item makes it so that when you are damaged, you only take a small percentage of the damage initially, with the rest of the damage turning into pink health on your health bar that you lose gradually over time. While it doesn't seem powerful, it basically buys you extra time when you take damage to heal off the damage that would otherwise end your run on the spot. When combined with any form of rapid healing, you can easily heal back into the green. Where Body Pillow allows you to survive more damage, Plushie is instead for saving you from fatal mistakes. Not as straightforward as a shield and damage reducer, but I think it's far more powerful. Still, I don't use it very much because I still remember what it was like in its first iteration. The third defensive item, Headphones, is kind of a mix of staving off large swathes of damage and surviving from big mistakes. Headphones gives you a small chance of dodging an enemy hit, creating a shockwave that knocks enemies back while you do so, with the chance of increasing as you level it to its max level of 5. This means you'll generally take less damage and you'll be more able to escape tricky situations. However, while not dying is important, you can't just win by not dying, you also need to kill the enemies. Luckily, the last defensive item might have something for that. The fourth defensive item, Breastplate, requires you to take 500 damage in a single run to unlock. However, its ability is quite powerful. Not only does it reduce the damage you take, but when an enemy hits you, it gives a chance to do damage to that enemy. When you level it up to its max level of 3, the amount of damage reduced, while the chance of dealing damage on hit and the amount of damage dealt on hit are all increased. This item is basically an attack reflector. However, it has a downside of reducing your speed by 20%, which means it kind of borders on the next set of items I'll talk about. This set of items is what I like to call Tradeoff Items. Power at a price. The item grants you something, usually a stat boost, but in exchange you have to give up something in return. However, because you are losing something when you use the item, the boost that you get is generally incredibly powerful. Most of them are items you should avoid in general unless your character has a synergy that benefits from the item, or has a means to offset the cost. When I talk about characters, I'll talk about which items work best with which character. The first of these items, Face Mask, is probably the most straightforward. You deal 1.3 times more damage and attack 10% faster, but in exchange, you take 30% more damage. It only has a max level of 1, so it's generally a decent item to grab, especially if you're a skilled player who isn't getting hit too often. The next item, Injection Type Asakoko, has a bigger trade-off. To unlock this item, you'll need to beat stage mode with either Breathe In Asakoko or Plug Type Asakoko equipped. Every second, it makes you lose 5% of your HP. Notably, this loss of HP doesn't count as damage or hit, so any effects that proc when you're damaged or hit will not activate. So, why would you take this item? Well, because at its max level of 3, it gives you an 80% damage boost, the highest damage boost you can get from any item. It's extremely powerful, but the trade-off is very costly, so it's only effective with characters that can easily offset the cost via healing. Energy Drink is another trade-off item, and it increases your haste and speed, but in exchange, it reduces your maximum health. To unlock it, all you need to do is survive 10 minutes as Calliope Mori. It's a decent item, but I find it to be generally underwhelming compared to the other trade-off items, unless you're playing as a character who can benefit from the speed boost. Gorilla's Paw is unlocked when you beat the final boss of stage 1, and at its max level of 3, multiplies your damage by 1.3. In exchange, your chance of getting critical hits is reduced. The loss is 20%, so for most characters, that means you're basically getting a base damage multiplier in exchange for no critical hits. For characters who benefit from critical hits, this item is a terrible one to grab, but if your character has an abysmal crit chance, or doesn't have any effects that proc on crit, this item is worth grabbing. It is not worth grabbing, however, with this next item. Hope Soda, an item unlocked by beating stage mode with Iris, increases the amount of damage done by critical hits. The trade-off for the increased crit damage is that the charge time for your special attack is increased. Characters who don't benefit from Gorilla's Paw will benefit from Hope Soda, and vice versa. Devil Hat is unlocked by dealing 1000 damage in a single attack, and it basically makes it so you do more damage to units who are farther away from you. However, you will do less damage to units closer to you. The distance threshold is 150 pixels, but that's all I can really say about this item because I never actually use it. It's by far the least viable of all the trade-off items because while its detriment might not be as difficult to handle, if you're able to keep the enemy to 150 pixels away from yourself, then you don't really need the item. As such, it's only really useful when you're already winning. The last trade-off item, Membership, is slightly different from the rest of the trade-off items. All the other trade-off items were basically exchanging stats in one area for stats in another. However, Membership is different. It gives you a boost in your attack and defense. However, instead of losing stats in any other area, it instead makes you lose coins, 3 per second. It's unlocked by beating stage mode with Super Shadow Time equipped, an item I'll get to later. Unlike all the other trade-off items, where you need to consider whether the character can handle the trade-off, Membership is universally effective on every character since the trade-off doesn't affect your character in-game. However, whether or not the item is worth getting is dependent on whether or not you can afford to lose the coins. Generally, you'll be farming coins easily enough that you'll pretty much never go in the red, which makes this item a must-grab on paper, but if your average game of stage mode lasts 22 minutes, then you're losing about 4,000 coins a game, so you need to ask yourself if losing those 4,000 coins is worth the stat boost or if you should be using those 4,000 coins for something else, like the shop. I personally have no issue with using Membership, but I'm also swimming in coins, which most new players aren't, so if you're an early game player, I would advise against using this item. The next set of items I like to refer to as stat boosts. They improve your stats, but these improvements are generally weaker than those of the trade-off items. In exchange, however, you don't have to make any sacrifices when using them. If you want to get pedantic, you can separate the stat boost items into two categories, conditional and unconditional. The conditional items offer stat boosts when you meet certain conditions, but once you no longer meet those conditions, you will lose the stat boost. However, since they don't have any negative effects like the trade-off items, none of the stat boost items in general will be a detriment on any character. Mostly. The first of these items is Sake. It boosts your crit chance as long as you don't get hit. It also increases your crit chance slightly for 10 seconds when you eat food. However, if you do get hit, your crit chance will be lost and you will have to spend more time not being hit in order to get it back. It should be noted, however, that if you are hit while the body pillow shield is up, you won't lose the buff to your crit chance, meaning this item synergizes quite well with body pillow. You also won't lose your buff to the damage from injection type Asakoko either. The other conditional stat boost item is GWS Pill, which is unlocked by dying with Holu, an item I'll get to later. It increases your crit chance so long as your special attack is charging. This item synergizes the best with Hope Soda, as not only does Hope Soda increase the charge time for your special attack, meaning the buff from GWS Pill will last even longer, but the buff to your crit chance from GWS Pill means that there are more chances for the increased crit damage from Hope Soda to come into play. The rest of the stat boost items, the unconditional ones, offer straight up stat boosts with no conditions or downside. Nightly Milk increases the attack area of area type weapons and also gives you a boost to your pickup range. I personally consider this to be one of the best items because almost every weapon in the game is an area type weapon. Less than 20% of all the weapons in the entire game, including collabs, starter weapons, and basic weapons, are unaffected by Nightly Milk. Nightly Milk also boosts the area of some of the character's skills as well. As such, whenever I see it in the level up, I almost always grab it as it doesn't show up in the level up very often. Idol Costume, an item unlocked by using your special, is a generally less useful stat boost item. It decreases the time you need to charge your special. However, I don't think it's worth the item slot. Its role in decreasing your special cooldown is pretty much overshadowed by another item we'll get to later. It's also really character dependent as it's a waste of upgrades on certain characters, and for the final nail in the coffin, it requires 5 levels to max out. For what's being offered, you're pretty much better off putting those levels into more useful items and weapons. Limiter gives a massive stat boost to your pickup range, and that's it. You get it by surviving 10 minutes with Tsukumo-sana. Personally, I don't see the need for this item, but there are some characters who can benefit from the increased pickup range. This last category of items is the miscellaneous item group. They don't really fit into any of the other categories as none of them really help you in fighting enemies directly. The first of these items, Study Glasses, provides a bonus to XP you earn, 10% when you first get it and 30% at max level. It's unlocked by reaching level 50 in a single run. This item has 5 levels, which is already a huge investment, but given how important leveling up is in the long run, this item will generally be a net positive no matter what character you play. It is obviously at its strongest when you're starting out, so be sure to grab it early, like in your first levels, and when you grab it, you want to max it out as quickly as possible. The only time you don't really want to grab Study Glasses is when you're already late in a run, where the 5 level investment won't really yield any gains. Generally, I skip Study Glasses if I don't grab it in the first 5 minutes. Super Chatto Time, unlocked by having 5,000 coins in your shop, makes it so enemies drop more holo coins as well as having your character pick up those coins automatically. It doesn't offer any benefits in defeating enemies, and combined with its high max level of 5, it should really be clear that you only grab this item if you're trying to farm coins or are confident enough that you can beat this game with one hand behind your back. Stolen Piggy Bank, like Super Chatto Time, is also a meta currency booster, though one with a trickier unlock condition. You need to defeat a golden Yago to unlock it. It makes it so that you gain coins if you run certain distances. In addition, it also boosts your speed, but in exchange, it reduces your pickup range. I personally don't like getting this item because reducing pickup range makes it somewhat harder to level up, but that trade-off can easily be negated with the next item. Kusogaki Shackles, unlocked by surviving 10 minutes with Murasaki Shion, makes it so that all the negative effects of items that the player has are reduced, with those effects being completely negated when maxed out at level 3. This means that all of the trade-off items, as well as Breastplate and Stolen Piggy Bank, will no longer have their negative effects. As such, the value of Kusogaki Shackles is basically dependent on how many trade-off items you have equipped. So if you're running a build that has a lot of trade-off items, then Kusogaki Shackles will be a good pick. However, if you're just running one, like Membership, then the item's worth will be much lower. Chicken's Feather, unlocked by surviving 10 minutes with Takanashi Kiara, grants you an extra revive. If you die with a revive, you'll get 50% of your HP and kill all the non-boss enemies on the screen. It has a total of 3 levels, meaning you'll have a total of 3 revives if you max this item out. It's a good item for new players. Pika Pika Pimon makes it so that when you get hit, your special meter will charge up a bit. It has a max level of 3, is unlocked by default, as well as granting additional bonus health. I can't really think of much to say about this item other than the fact that it fills Idol Costume's niche of being a special charging item much better than Idol Costume. It's character dependent like Idol Costume, but the characters who benefit from Pika Pika Pimon generally benefit from it to the point that Idol Costume becomes kind of redundant. But other than that, it's not very powerful. These next 2 items pertain to anvils. Credit Card, unlocked by finding an anvil, makes it so anvils drop more quickly and it costs less to overlevel weapons with anvils. Blacksmith Gear, unlocked by overleveling a weapon with an anvil, makes it so that you can use an anvil twice instead of once, as well as increasing the stat boost for when you overlevel weapons. Both items are at their strongest together, but neither is particularly good on its own. I don't get these items very often, mostly because overleveling weapons is just frankly irrelevant in stage mode. However, it's a different story in endless mode. I'll make a video on that later. The last item, Holo, is either the best item in the game or the worst item in the game, depending on how you look at it. To unlock it, you need to defeat 5,000 enemies in a run, and it makes it so that the enemies become stronger and spawn more frequently. It also has 5 levels, so why would anyone grab this item? Well, because at level 1, for every 5 enemies you defeat after getting Holo, you get 1 Holo coin. After level 5, you will get 1 Holo coin for each enemy you defeat. Not only that, but those extra enemies you defeat still drop XP, meaning that if you can keep up with the stronger enemies, Holo can make it so that you level up faster, which only becomes stronger when you get study glasses with it as well. But for those coins, a maxed out Holo can easily net you thousands of coins in a single run. On average, I find myself netting over 10,000 coins per run from Holo alone. If you count the additional coins from collecting coins from defeated enemies, Holo Zom boxes, and the stage win bonus, then that means you can get about 15,000 to 20,000 coins per run. Of course, you'll still actually need to beat the stage, and since Holo makes the stage harder, I would personally advise not going for Holo 5 right out of the gate until you have a few shop upgrades under your belt. Also, Kusakake Shackles does not negate Holo's enemy strengthening or spawn increasing, so don't bother trying that. I did, and it did not go well. So that's pretty much all the items in the game. There are also special items called super items, which are basically stronger versions of maxed out basic items. Usually they have better stats, additional effects, and replace all the penalties from trade-off items with new buffs. They also max out at level 1 and thus don't need to be upgraded. Unfortunately, the only way to get them is from Holozom boxes. A Holozom box will have a 5% chance of containing a super item, and if you have the basic version of an item, you can't get its super version. And those are all the items in Holocure, at least in version 0.5. Thanks for watching. I'll be continuing to make videos on the other systems, like stamps. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date, and happy Holocuring.